Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Bear Down Ballers here on the Field of 68. I'm Ryan Wall, joined by Jordan Pollock. And Jordan, Arizona moved to 4-0 and got their second top 15 victory of the season when they beat the UCLA Bruins 69 to 65. What did you think of this game and how you doing today?
I'm doing great. I want to jump in though because this game was fun. It felt like a slugfest at times because UCLA just came out swinging. I thought the way that Cronin and the Bruins kind of game planned around this young Arizona team and just how they swarmed around Coapete every single time he seemed to touch the ball was just very good. Not super creative, but just like, hey, like we're gonna take away your freshman phenom and we're gonna make somebody else beat us. And I don't know about you and the rest of our viewers, but like early in the game, it was kind of feeling like this is a perfect game plan for kind of what this team really hasn't faced all year, and especially against a top team like UCLA is like in the Big Ten, a highly experienced head coach in Mick Cronin, some really good players on this team that again a year ago some of these guys really put up numbers. It was kind of getting scary at first of how they were playing defensively and how Arizona just took them a little bit to kind of figure out like, okay, like we can't do the same thing. We can't have Kobe bail us out, and we can't just throw up threes at the end of the shot clock. So I thought UCLA played a great defensive game plan for pretty much the entire game until Arizona was able to get adjusted.
Yeah, for sure. UCLA, they started this game in kind of how we're used to seeing Mick Cronin teams, especially on the defensive side. They're always so aggressive and they press the ball on defense and they don't allow any space for your shooters to get open and to get a shot off. And I think that really frustrated Arizona shooters early in this game. And Arizona was down by 10 points, before you can even, looked up. And then Arizona went on a 7-0 run of their own. And it seemed like Arizona just couldn't get going, especially when the UCLA crowd got involved early in that one. But Jordan, the guy I wanted to talk about and I wanted to start with for Arizona because this wasn't only the best game that he had this year, this is the best game I've ever seen him have. And he is arguably the most consistent player on this whole Arizona team, and that is Anthony Del Orso. This guy literally has transformed himself from last year to this year. All of the stuff that we criticized him about, his lackluster performances on defense, his inconsistent scoring ability, all of that is gone this year. He is efficient. He has excelled on defense. And as a playmaker, this guy is just rock solid for Tommy Lloyd in this Arizona team. And he's exactly what they needed. And he's exactly what they needed when they brought him in last year. He's delivering on it this year. What'd you think of Anthony Del Orso and his spectacular performance against UCLA?
Definitely, completely agree. The Australian native really is showing, I think, kind of what he did at Campbell for the first little bit that he was there before he transferred over. And I know last year the roster was different. You had a Caleb Love on the roster that wants to take a majority of the shots. And as a coaching staff, I'm sure that's where they wanted the shots to go with just his history and how great of a player he was. And so now Del Orso's kind of getting a lot more opportunities. Took the most shots in the game. Shot the ball 11 times from the field. 4-7 from three. Still showing how good of a 3-point shooter he is. But like he said, he's playmaking. He's playing well. 3 assists. That's a great number for a guy that apparently is a score first guy. So he's played great. And him and Jaden Bradley have completely kind of blown me out of the water for what I was expecting coming into this year.
Yeah, 100%. I agree with that. And the number one thing to me that's different with Anthony Del Orso, it starts with your effort level and your confidence. And his confidence is just on a different level this year. You could tell, like, he's getting into the game. You could see it in his reactions when he hits a shot. He's getting the whole team involved. He's getting the fans, riled up. And we just didn't see that, last season for whatever reason. I don't know what that is, but we see a version of Anthony Del Orso that is a very capable player. And when he's on, this guy is just an elite scorer. He's the only guy on Arizona's roster that has two games with 18 or more points this season, although he's third on the team average wise. I mean, this he was just spectacular. I love to see it. And Arizona has needed his big performances because a guy that you mentioned earlier is Koa Pete, who did struggle in this one. He did have four fouls, which kind of limited his action. He only played 21 minutes. Karchenkov only played 14 minutes in this one. And Pete only scored 7 points. He did have six turnovers, four rebounds, and his scoring has gone down every single game this season. He started with the 30 points, 18, 10, and now 7. And to me, that's actually impressive from Arizona as a team because they have shown that even when a guy that looked like in the first game was going to lead them every night is down, they can pick up the slack in other areas and they could fill in the holes to still be a successful team.
Yeah, definitely. I completely agree, especially with how early we are into the season. I know they played an elite team in UCLA, but kind of where the rotation kind of already is and seems completely solidified, I think is really great, and I think a really great show for kind of the continuity and the chemistry that this team can build going forward. Bringing Del Orso, bringing Owaka, bringing in Aristote off the bench for a few minutes, and it's huge. Bringing in the veteran presence with another freshman that's going to give you a little bit of shooting. I know Aristote didn't get on the box score in the scoring position, but the game before he tied that freshman record for threes. And so I think the further we get in and the more chemistry and the more confidence these guys can build, I think it's going to be huge for this team because you also look at the box score of what UCLA did. They brought 3 points off the bench compared to our 28. I think that can be a huge difference in games from where your starters and what your guys are bringing off the bench.
Yeah, for sure, without a doubt. And you mentioned him a little bit earlier, but Jaden Bradley in this one, although his stat line doesn't stick out a ton, 15 points, still had four rebounds, three assists, two steals, which is great. But just down the stretch, when Arizona needed it most, he came up with multiple big buckets along with Del Orso to kind of seal the deal for Arizona. And I think that is going to be his role this season. He's going to be the closer for Arizona, as he showed in multiple big games for Arizona this season. And I think having that comfortability and having a veteran like that you can rely on late in games to be able to give him the ball when you're maybe down by two or four or maybe even up by two and you give him the ball and he can drive, to the basket, either get the bucket or get fouled. That just to me puts you on a different level. And yeah, I've loved his performances this season. I would have liked him to see him be a little more aggressive early on in the game, but I still think it's more important how you finish, and I think he did a great job of that. What'd you think of Bradley in this one against the Bruins?
Definitely, completely agree. I think I saw a stat in the last 2 minutes so far this season. He's like 12 of 13 from the field. Just an absolutely absurd number. And it can be super important, especially a guy that can score at every single level of the court. But first, like he's a threat to score off the bounce. And that can just do so much and pressure the defense so much. Because as opposed to just a shooter, you just got to be ready on a quick closeout. It's like, nah, like you got to be, a screen could come any way, and the second he gets an angle, it's over because he can get layups over bigs. He can get inside and use both hands. You can tell he really did the mic and drill a lot in high school with how good he is around the rim and the different angles he can hit. He's just been a nightmare for defenses to try to control, especially late in games, like you said.
Yeah, he really has taken a step forward. We wondered before the season which version will we see him this year. Will he take a step forward? And although his stats don't stick out a ton, he still is averaging more points than he did last year and more assists. But the numbers don't kind of run off the page. But down the stretch of every big game that Arizona's been in this year, he's came up huge. And I think that's been the biggest difference. A guy that to me was excellent in this game was Mo Krivas. 10 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 blocks in this one. This guy was just very active on the glass on both sides of the floor, and he really just had so many big plays, especially on defense. I noticed he was just a lot more active, a lot more aggressive, and 5 for 6 from the field, very efficient there. Although there's not many plays that are called for him, I think he's just like that glue guy for this team that he just needs to do all the little things. And when he gets in close to finish a couple dunks, and I think that's what he provides. And he did it at a high level against UCLA.
Yeah, definitely. If you weren't going to bring him up, I was. 2 blocks, like you said, 10 and 8. Great numbers from a guy who isn't really our go-to guy. I would say like how much pressure that he's had from Tommy Lloyd, from even Umar Ballo, like saying he transferred to give Krivas room. I, I I don't have a problem saying I thought it was the best game I've ever seen him play. He was quick, he was decisive, he wasn't second guessing himself. 5 of 6 from the field. Those are great numbers from a starter. And just how he was able to, like I said, when he gets the ball on the block, you doing a quick move, getting to a sky hook. He loves that sky hook right off the block. And using his body to get in position, especially when smaller guards are guarding him. He did a great job. I know he had 2 dunks in the game just off of his positioning and being able to fight for a better position and seal off the defenders. And so with how many different lineups we can throw it, and especially how many small lineups a lot of teams in the Big 12 like to run, if he can keep that up and that confidence and being able to seal smaller defenders and use his body and his length in ways against the defense, I think the sky's the limit for him in this offense and what he can bring on a night in and night out basis.
Yeah, and Jordan, another key stat, he played 34 minutes in this game, and that's the most he's ever played in a collegiate game. When I saw it, I thought that that was his most, and I double checked, and that is his most because, in his first year, he only played a little over 12 minutes a night, only played 8 games last season. So this is the real, first season that we're seeing Mo Krivas in a legit starting role, playing at least 20 minutes every night. I know the two the previous 2 wins before the UCLA game, he played less than 20, but those games were blowouts and weren't needed at that level, so he didn't need to. I thought Arizona, especially defensively down the stretch, they did a terrific job against the UCLA team that in the first half they were just dominant. So many different guys. Tyler Billadell, Xavier Booker was hitting a lot of threes, and Eric Daly Jr. I mean, he was terrific. This UCLA team, they impressed me. I thought Arizona was going to win by 10 points and only won by 4. You were closer than that on me, and yeah, I was impressed by UCLA, and it was just great to see this rivalry game back in action. And it did have, although it wasn't during the Pac-12 season like it used to be, it wasn't at the home of the Bruins or the Wildcats, it still had that Arizona UCLA feel to me, and it did have that big game feel. What'd you think?
Definitely, I completely agree. Especially you could hear on the broadcast, you could hear quite a bit of chants from the U of A crowd, and it kind of sounded like it was a lot closer to the 60-40, like I think both of us kind of thought it would be.
Yeah, 100%. So Arizona won 69 to 65. They moved to 4-0, second ranked victory of the season, and it moved Arizona up 1 spot to number 4 in the AP poll. This week they play the number 3 team in the country in the UConn Huskies. That is, we'll get into that game in a little bit. But Jordan, before we get into that, I wanted to talk about something that released as we're recording this earlier on Tuesday, and that was a new mock draft, a new NBA mock draft by Jeremy Woo of ESPN.com. And Arizona had 4 players ranked in his mock draft, and so I wanted to go over them and I wanted to tell you their spots, and we could discuss and see kind of what are our thoughts about where they're ranked. The 4 players that were ranked were Koa Pete, who's ranked number 8, Dwayne Aristotle, who's ranked number 30, Braden Berries is number 45, and Mo Krivas is number 47 in the second round. So 2 players in the first, 2 players in the second round for the latest ESPN mock draft. Still ways away, but as I said to you before we started recording, this is kind of a level check a couple weeks into the season about how people are feeling about some of the guys, especially these guys from Arizona. What did you think when you saw these rankings?
Yeah, I thought the only main one that surprised me was the Krivas one, especially just thinking about how many dominant bigs. Like it's like we still live in a big dominant era of college basketball. Like teams that have great bigs are going to be really good teams. And so I think Mo Krivas, like I said, he had his best game of his Arizona career. Last year was riddled with injuries. His first year, he was fighting for rotation minutes. I just haven't seen enough of him. And so I was kind of surprised by that, especially with just kind of also his play. Like he doesn't like he's not overly big to where like his style of just pretty much fully playing in the paint, I don't feel like works super well in the NBA. And so for him just not really having an outside shot that we haven't seen really at all, he may or may not, but that's something we haven't seen. So off that potential, like there's none that we have seen. And so
Yeah.
I still think that's a really surprising thing, which is where the NBA is nowadays. A guy that's kind of skinnier, kind of lengthy, but not overly tall, doesn't really have an outside shot. So that was just kind of a puzzling thing to me from that.
Yeah, he was a surprise. When I looked at this, it was surprising to see his name listed at all. And yeah, I agree. I still think he's very raw. And although he's in his third year, he's only in his second year actively on a roster and his first year being a major contributor on a team. So yeah, I fully expect him, unless anything crazy happens and he has an unbelievable, rest of the season, which is possible. I just don't see that really happening because like I said, he's more of the glue guy for this team. He's not one of their star players, so I was surprised to see that. Another surprising thing was Braden Berry's ranked number 45. This has him, they have him slotted to go to the Atlanta Hawks, number 45, and that is because he has had his ups and downs, but I don't think before the season started, I saw people have him in the around the 20s was about the consensus. I saw a lot of mock drafts. So to drop him all the way into the 40s just a couple weeks in, and he has shown flashes, a lot of flashes, and that raw potential. I I just was surprised by this, with Barry's being 45. And also, the other guy I wanted to get your take on was Dwayne Aristo being 30. That was a big jump up. And he's another guy who had a great game a few games ago, but very raw prospect, and the consistency is not there yet with him. What do you think of Aristo and Barry's?
Yeah, the Aristode probably one is just an immediate reaction of him tying that freshman record with just how big of a need and a want shooting is in the NBA. So outside of that, and he's a pretty good athlete. So I'm sure that was probably the main pull for that reasoning. With the berries, like you said, it's probably just a production take. Like he's not looking super great in his production his freshman year. But like we said, like the what you call it, the draft mock game is a completely it's its own thing almost, and it can be changed from one game to another. Luckily, seasons and players aren't made in one game.
100%. And Jordan, not many teams have a much better opportunity than this Arizona team has. This Wednesday night, the Arizona Wildcats go to Stores, Connecticut to take on the UConn Huskies, a team who has won two of the last three national championships. And Arizona has the chance to beat the last two teams to win a national championship, as they already beat the Florida Gators earlier this season. Arizona versus UConn is taking place on Wednesday at 7 p.m. on the East Coast. It's going to be on FS1. This is just a massive game, and there's just not many games bigger than this right now in the whole sport. It's UConn number 3, Arizona number 4, and it is just two elite coaches. It's Dan Hurley, it's Tommy Lloyd. This is just spectacular. I can't wait for this one. This was a game that I really was looking forward to the second this schedule got released. The Florida one was great, the UCLA one was great, but this is just unbelievable because these teams have only faced one other time in program history. So it's just great to see. What are your opening thoughts about this matchup?
Yeah, I completely agree. We're just a little less than a week away from Feast Week, one of our best favorite times of the year with all these tournaments, holiday tournaments, and you can get random matchups every so often. But the difference is this game is on a college campus. This game is on a college campus, a non-conference game. They seem to be becoming more popular, and I am so excited by that. But that's the difference. These one-and-one series is like Arizona's done it with Duke. They've done it with Wisconsin. Now they're doing it with UConn. It's awesome. A top five matchup on a campus is I don't know if there's much more blockbuster than this, especially with kind of where the UConn program has been. I will say it. Dan Hurley is the best coach in college basketball right now. The UConn program that he has brought up, who has been good the last 20, 25 years, he's just taken it to a completely new level. A top five matchup is huge. Like you said earlier this year, the Florida one you thought was kind of that moment for Tommy Lloyd. This is a bigger moment. If they can find a way to get a win, this would be a marquee win for Tommy Lloyd in his time. A top five matchup on the road against the best coach in college basketball, a team that's won two of the last three titles. I think nothing could be bigger for this Arizona resume, the confidence of these freshmen, and Tommy Lloyd's time in Arizona. Nothing could be bigger that doesn't happen in March than this.
Without a doubt. If Arizona goes into Stores, Connecticut and beats the UConn Huskies, they without a doubt are the best team in college basketball with the best resume. And I don't think you can argue about that at all. Arizona at that point would have three top 15 victories and two top three victories, which no other team has, and beating the last two teams to win a national championship. That would just put them on a different level. And I'll just say, if Tommy Lloyd can take this Arizona team into Connecticut and beat the Huskies, it's the best win of his coaching career at Arizona. And it would really just take Arizona to a different level from a team that is, always on that borderline of blue blood. And that would, for this season, put them up there with all of the top teams ahead of Purdue and Houston and in that group. But Jordan, this matchup, when you break it down, is just as tough as it gets. It really is. This UConn team, they were your pick to win the national championship in our first episode a couple weeks ago, and they've proven why they have a shot to win a national championship. They have such an elite veteran team. It's Terrace Reed Jr. This guy is averaging 20 points, 9.3 rebounds, and he has had at least 19 in all three games, and just has improved so much in his second year at UConn. He's averaging over 10 more points per game than he did a season ago, and that's not all because they return a few elite guards in Alex Caliban, Solo Ball, and Silos Demary Jr. I mean, that trio and that top four right there is just very, very hard. And I think they're going to present Arizona with a ton of problems.
Yeah, completely agree. And Terrace Reed, he's only played in three of the four games, but he's been on a tear. Like he said, 20 points, almost 10 rebounds, almost two assists, a steal a game, almost three blocks a game. He's looked great. And even in that BYU game the other night that they were able to stay ahead when BYU came and put on a nice run to make it close in the last 6 minutes. This team is really, really good, and they just don't really seem to have many weaknesses. Like, and especially for a team that Caravan feels like he's been there forever, and it doesn't feel like there's anything that he does really great, but there's nothing that he's bad at. He's just really good. He's really solid everywhere. Like, I didn't think the dude was a very good 3-point shooter, and he hit like two or three against BYU. And just the level of that this team has and how good they are, like Dan Hurley, man, that guy can put together a roster.
Yeah, I mean this team is making 40.2% of their three pointers this season. Alex Caravan, who just mentioned, 63.2% of his three pointers this year. That is just absurd stuff to see. You don't see that very often, if at all. Period. It's that uncommon to see. And this team is deep with veterans, like I mentioned. This roster is just very tough. And I thought it from the beginning of the season that this would be the toughest matchup, not just because UConn's such a great team, but also you're going to Stores, one of the toughest places to play, and one of the best home court advantages that a team has to me in the entire sport. I can't wait for this one. But Jordan, let's get into our predictions. Do you think Arizona wins this game, moves to 5-0, or do you think they suffer their first loss of the season?
I'm gonna stick with my pick that I picked in our first episode, and I think UConn will get the win in this game. I think Arizona will keep it close, but I don't think they're gonna let what kind of happened to BYU happen. I think they'll be able to separate it. And I think you said the spread was around 5 points, and
It's
I
five and a
think
half.
I think I would take that for the Huskies, especially in just the environment. Because as much as like, yes, they played Florida, yes, they've played UCLA, but those were on mutual site arenas. One of them even being in Las Vegas, McHale North, as we call it. But this is just a completely different beast that these freshmen are going to be stepping into.
100%. I agree with part of that. The part I disagree is I do think Arizona will cover the 5.5 point spread, but I do have to agree with you in the fact that this is where I think that Arizona's perfect season ends. I think UConn's going to win, but I think it's going to be about 2 to 4 points right under that spread. I think it's going to be a nail biter. I think it's going to be an incredible game. I think it's going to live up to the hype that we hope it is, because I really think this has potential to be just an unbelievable game between two elite teams. But Arizona is still a frisky team, and if they play at their best, if we see elite performances from Koa Pete and Braden Berries and Jaden Bradley, and the front court with Krivas plays well and slows down Reed, I think Arizona has a real chance to win this game. I do. They're plus 210 on the money line. I think Arizona can beat UConn, but if I have to say, I'm gonna say UConn wins it in a close one. But I really can't wait for this one. It should be a fantastic game, Jordan. Any final thoughts before we go today?
I think just a little bit further into the game, I think the way this Arizona team is it feels like it has for most years. They're going to find ways to score. It's can they help themselves out, get extra second chances on the offensive end with offensive rebounds, and can they have the upper hand on the glass? I think that's going to be probably the biggest point to this game, which is how good both teams are.
Yeah, 100%. That is going to be a difference maker for this one. We both think UConn's going to win this one, and UConn did win the first matchup between Arizona and UConn back in the Elite Eight in 2011 in California. So this is the second meeting between the Huskies and the Wildcats. We'll see who comes out on top in this one. It takes place on Wednesday night, as I said, on FS1 at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Thanks everybody for tuning in. I'm Ryan Wall. He's Jordan Pollock.